Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope you guys are doing really good because today is Sunday and we're going to learn our first material in discourse analysis. That is why I need you to be attentive because this is going to be really fun. Right. So before I begin the presentation, I will first briefly introduce myself, just in case some of you haven't known me. So my name is Brittany Karen Joseph, but please just call me Brittany for short. And I'm an English literature of 2019 student, and my student number is 23. Okay, so in this video, I'll present one of the discourse analysis approach, which is the critical discourse analysis, specifically from Van Djik. To begin with, here is the table of contents. Here is the list of the topics that I will discuss in this video, just so you know what to expect after you watch this video until the very end. Alright, first we have introduction. What is critical discourse analysis? Second, we have conceptual and theoretical frameworks, which consist of macro versus micro, power as control, which consists of control of text and context of a discourse, mind control, and discourse of domination. While in third, we have research areas in critical discourse analysis. It includes gender inequality, ethnocentrism, anti-Semitism, nationalism, and racism. And then we have the media discourse, as well as the political discourse, and finally the professional and institutional power. Alright, first, what is critical discourse analysis? The definition. According to Van Djik, critical discourse analysis is a discourse analytical research that studies how social power abuse, dominance, and inequality are enacted, reproduced, and resisted by text and speech in social and political contexts. It deals with the relationship between discourse and power, with the aim to understand, expose, and resist social inequalities. It focuses on how discourse structure enact, confirm, legitimize, reproduce, and challenge the relations of power and dominance in society. However, it rejects the possibilities of value-free science, as they believe that social inequalities are inherently a part of social structures and are influenced by social interactions. Now, Fairclough and Wodak, who are also the most prominent linguists in area of critical discourse analysis, summarize the main tenets of CDA as follows. First, critical discourse analysis addresses social problems. Second, power relations are discursive. Third, discourse constitutes society and culture. Fourth, discourse does the ideological work. Fifth, discourse is historical. Sixth, the link between text and society is mediated, probably through discourse. And then seventh, discourse analysis is explanative and explanatory in nature. And last, discourse is a form of social action, and in certain situation, it is also a social movement. Second, conceptual and theoretical framework. This section provides a triangulated theoretical framework of CDA that relates discourse, cognition, and society. First, we have the micro versus macro levels of analysis. Microanalysis operates at textual or speech levels, for example, like lexical items, language use, discourse, verbal interaction, and communication. So, in other words, microanalysis is the linguistic tools. While on the other hand, macroanalysis operates at a broader level, which consists of social and cognitive levels. For example, power, dominance, ideologies, and inequalities among social groups. In our everyday interaction and experience, the macro as well as the micro levels form a one unified whole. For example, a racist speech in a debate is a discourse when we perceive it through the micro level. However, at the same time, it is also a part of legislation of racism when we look at it through the macro level. Now we have power as control. Groups have more or less power if they are able to more or less control the acts and mind of others. A central notion in most CDA work is that of power, and when we say power, we mean the social power of certain groups and institutions. First, a source of power. It refers to the privileged access to social resources such as force, money, status, fame, knowledge, information, culture, and access to various forms of public discourse and communication. And then we have types of power, which is recognized according to the various research employed to exercise the power. For example, military are powerful because of their force. Rich people are powerful because of their money. And professors or journalists are persuasively powerful because of their knowledge, information, and authority in a certain context. And last, hegemony. The power of dominant groups are integrated in laws, rules, norms, habits, and general consensus. For example, as we live in a male-dominated society, women are expected to be more polite, to avoid offending men, and therefore this creates inequalities in terms of social status, which of course may create sexism later on. Most individuals, including you and me, generally have an active control of discourse, such as text and talk, in personal everyday interactions, usually with our friends, family, and college. However, we have passive control when it comes to public text or talk. For example, like the mass media, police, teachers, and those who have the authority to tell people what to do or not and what to believe or not. On the other hand, powerful social groups have an exclusive control to one or more type of public discourse, usually within their field. For example, professors control the scholarly discourse, journalists control media discourse, teachers control educational discourse, lawyers control legal discourse, and politicians control policy and public discourse. Now, discourse in terms of complex communicative events of text, context, and control may be defined for relevant categories of communicative situation and structures of text and talk. First is the context. Context is the control over the communicative situation, including setting, ongoing actions, participants, and mental representations. For example, professors and not students may control the settings, which is the time and place of study exam. Second, structures of text and talk, which refers to who controls or change the topic. For instance, editors of news media, they decide what topic to be covered in the media. Another example is that men tend to control the topics used in a conversation when they talk with women. Now we have the mind control. This is still a part of the power control. So besides context and structure, controlling people's mind is also an indirect but fundamental way to reproduce dominance. Mind control in CDA usually aims to control the recipient's intentions, plans, knowledge, opinions, attitudes, ideologies, and consequent actions. The analysis of mind control presupposes distinction between personal memory and socially shared semantic memory. Specifically, it is assumed that episodic memory represents people's personal experiences as multimodal mental models. Why does it sound like tongue twister? Yeah, multimodal mental models are situation models. Hence, it has referential semantic nature. On the other hand, context model control the pragmatic properties of discourse, like speech acts, appropriateness, and politeness. Specific discourse structures like topic, argument, metaphor, lexical choices, and rhetorical figures can also influence the content and structure of mental models in ways preferred by the speaker. However, speakers of powerful groups may want to control not only the specific knowledge of specific recipients, as is news and parliamentary debates, but also they want to control the attitudes and ideologies of all citizens. For example, through the argumentative structure of editorials or opinionated articles, or also by repeated political or media discourse on similar events and specific moves of generalization. For instance, how the media portray immigration, terrorism, and economic crisis. Okay, here I provide you an example of the use of mind control in headlines. Now take a look of the left headline that talks about immigrants. As we can see, there are specific lexicon used such as invasion, rapist, foreign murder, and we cannot throw out. This specified use of lexicon can denote a negative connotation, which create a bad perception and generalization toward immigrants, and therefore a British citizen can think that immigrants are invaders, they are murderers and rapists, where actually not all immigrants are like that. And in the right side, I provide an example of a terrorist who kills and a white boy who kills. Now, let's take a look of the specified lexicon used. In the left headlines, it has maniac, it has kills, which creates a negative connotation toward ISIS. And of course, this leads to Islamophobia. While the other headline, it uses the terms angelic boy and evil for right masculars, which is not too harsh. Usually the editors purposefully employed this kind of vocabulary to reduce the negative tone, which is known as whitewashing, because they are white, so they kind of have privilege. Now for the last, we have discourse of domination. Studies of social style have paid extensive attention to the way language and discourse may vary and index power differences between speakers and recipients. First, we have morphology. Men use diminutives when addressing women to belittle them. For example, they use missy instead of miss. And then lexicon. The use of racial slurs toward ethnic minorities. Third, pronouns. Power differences and politeness between speakers and recipients are marked by special morphology structure. For example, when we address somebody who is older than us, we put Mr. in front of it instead of just somebody. We call them Mr. Somebody, if that makes sense. Okay, then we have syntax and lexicon. This is usually used in rape trials. Passive syntax and euphemistic lexical items are used by men to mitigate their responsibility for their violence against women. Here I provide you an example of the use of passive syntax in headlines. Let's read the original headline. Woman was flirty and very friendly in the hours before she was allegedly raped. This headline uses a passive syntactic structure, which creates a tone as if it is the victim's fault. Now we have metaphors. Metaphors may be used in the court to suggest that rape victims may be lying. For example, in legal discourse, they tend to use the term defendant for rapist and complainant for rape victims. And then we have storytelling. Story in many ways index social identities and may also be used to show power. When some female managers tell stories to show how tough they can be as leaders. And then conversations. Many properties of talk show differences of power or status, for instance, in turn-taking, sequencing, interruptions, topic initiation, and change, especially used when studied for gender differences. Okay, now we have arrived at the last discussion, which is areas of research in critical discourse analysis. Main areas in critical discourse analysis include the study of gender and race as prototypical examples of critical inquiry and on only a few genres, such as those like media and politics. Nevertheless, here are to refer to some of studies in CDA. First, we have gender inequality. Feminist work on discourse has become a paradigmatic for CDA, especially since much of this work deals with social inequality and dominations, so much that there is now a branch of feminist CDA on its own. Research on discourse and gender initially focused on assumed gender differences of text and talk, such as the use of diminutives or tag questions by women. However, a more critical approach also paid a special attention to male access and domination in interactions, such as interruptions and the control of topic and change. However, current research emphasizes that gender differences are closely related to other communicative and contexts, such as social class, status, and role of participants. Incidentally, it is remarkable that whereas a critical discourse study of gender and race are numerous, there is as yet a very little critical research on dominant resistance social class discourse outside the sociolinguistics and stylistics. Second, it is ethnocentrism, anti-Semitism, nationalism, and racism. Many studies on ethnic and racial inequality reveal a remarkable degree of similarity between stereotype, prejudice, and other forms of verbal derogation across discourse type, media, and national boundaries. In early 1980s, Van Dijk and Wodak have examined how minorities and ethnic relations in Europe and America are represented in discourse. It found conversational features such as hesitation, semantic moves like "we have nothing against black, but," and negative lexical descriptions such as the use of the word illegals. And then we have media discourse. Today, critical analysis of the media discourse has a central place in CDA, but it was first introduced in critical communication studies. The critical tone was set by a series of bad news by the Glasgow University Media Group on features of television reporting in the coverage of various issues such as industrial disputes, war, and AIDS. At the same time, the Center of Contemporary Cultural Study by Stuart Hall made contributions to critical studies of media and its role in policing the crisis, and also the reproduction of racism. Toward the end of 1970s, the first critical studies of the media and linguistics was introduced by Fowler. They found the structures of sentences, the use of passive and active, may enhance negative representations of the outgroup actors such as black youths, downplay the negative actions of the in-groups or authorities, such as the police. He also focuses on linguistic tools such as the analysis of transitivity in syntax, lexical structures, modality, and speech acts. In the last 2 decades, these studies have not only investigated social and communicative contexts, but also have related to the systematic analysis of the structure of media discourse, such as lexicon, syntax, topics, metaphors, coherence, actor description, news schemas, multimodal analysis of image, and many more. As is the case in many critical media studies, these critical analyses are applied to the issues coverage of pressing social and political problems, such as the Gulf and Iraq wars, the war on drugs, terrorism, globalization, sexism, racism, and Islamophobia, but from a discourse analytical point of view. Now we have political discourse. Since critical discourse analysis is especially interested in the critical study of power abuse and its resistance, therefore it's not really surprising that political discourse has been a central focus in CDA. Across many countries, issues generates empirical studies and methods. It has been Ruth and her collaborators who have played a leading role in the CDA approach to political discourse. In a vast number of books and articles she wrote, she examined anti-Semitism, racism, nationalism, the political discourse of Weltham and Haider, and the everyday making of politics in Brussels. And another is Fairclough's studies of political discourse, or is often conducted within a political economic perspective. It has paid detailed attention to issues of globalization and British politics, such as the discourse of New Labour, following his foundational studies of language and power on CDA. However, his approach to CDA especially emphasized the need to relate discourse structures and discursive perspective practice to social and political structure at the macro level of analysis. Now we also have professional and institutional power. The CDA focus on domination and resistance imply a special interest for institutional and organizational discourse, as in the case for politics, the mass media, as well as the discourse of members of communities and social groups. Other domains where professionals and institutional power abuse have been critically studied from discourse analytical perspective is the text and talk in the courtroom, and then the bureaucratic discourse, and then medical discourse, educational discourse, academic and scientific discourse, corporate and organizational discourse, and discourse of the unions. In all these cases, power and dominance are associated with their professional elites, rules and routines that form the background of everyday discursive reproduction. Usually the victim of targets of such power came from the public, citizen, client, audience, and us students. Alright, I think this was all of my presentation. I thank you guys for your attention, and especially for those who have watched this until the very end. Please don't hesitate. If you have any question, just directly address me or write it in the comment section below. I really appreciate it. So I guess see you and have a good day.